Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about creating a SharePoint library using Power Automate. Now, I previously did a video on making a list, and I figured it'd be the same, but it's not. You have to use a completely different approach, and it does take a little more time to set it up, because in the list you can do one item at a time. You can do every column in one action, where in a library you cannot, because all because of one thing, because you can't set the template type. Okay, a template type for a list is 100, or template number is 100. The template number for a library is 101. Well, in the site's endpoint, you cannot set the template type. It only works for lists. So today I'm going to show you how to do a library in Power Automate. So what you see here is my 365 dev environment. And I'm going to start you off with the documentation. So there's two sites that I used to build this. So the first one was, how do I create columns, right? And I went to EasySharePoint.com and found this site. How do you create different columns in a SharePoint library using Power Automate? Okay, this guy is a genius, and I use his sites a lot. He also does SP guides, I think, if I remember right. And he is really good at this stuff. So now, as you know, anytime you send, or anytime you're dealing with SharePoint with Power Automate, you have to do an HTTP call for almost everything. There's a few actions you can do that are out of the box, but you know, they're very basic, and it only generally deals with the top layer of SharePoint. You know, you can't get too deep with it. So it even walks you through how to start the flow up. You know, you do mailing trigger flow, and then, you know, get the SharePoint site information, so on and so forth. But the part I want to show you in here is not that. This is how you make a column inside SharePoint. Okay. You're changing the metadata of the field. So you got a type of SharePoint field, and then this right here determines what kind of field you're making. Okay. If you're making a text field, making a date time field, you're making a choice field, you're making a people or group field, what have you, right? And you see there's not a lot of properties here. There's like 2 or 3 that you really need, because whatever you don't specify here, it uses the default value. Okay. And sorry, I got really bad allergies today. My eyes are really itchy. Okay. And you encase it in curly braces, but you can only do one column per action. Anytime I try to put it in an array, it fails. So you have to do it that way. So now, next thing is, how do you know what to put for the FieldTypeKind, right? They're all numbers. Okay, I found this other site right here called FieldType Enumeration. It's part of Microsoft Learn, and it gives you a brief definition of what it's doing, you know, what it's for, and then down here it gives you a table. Okay, all the values you put in the FieldTypeKind and what they are correspond to. You want to make a text field, you're going to put a 2 there. If you want a date time, you put a 4 there, so on and so forth. Okay, and you can click on each one of these, and it'll tell you how to set up the metadata. Okay, and then here gives you a brief description. It says each field type dictates the kind of information that can be entered, the operations that can be performed, and how data is organized and retrieved. Properly categorizing fields not only optimizes storage and retrieval, but it also enhances integrity and validation processes. Okay, so, and this is the link I clicked on to get to this thing, but you have to go you have to go one step deeper to get to the enumeration part of it. But it shows all kinds of stuff on here. Okay, now here's our goal. Okay, let me refresh this. Sorry, let me make this a little bigger so it's easier to read. Okay, I ran this flow, and I created this library. Okay, and inside the library, you'll see it has, oh, I should have went to the settings, I'm sorry. Let's go to library settings, more library settings. as you can see here, I put the name in the description as the same name. So, and then as you see, it has several columns. I'll have to pull this up a little bit. Whoop, that's not quite that much. As you can see, of course, the title field gets created with the library, but then you got description as well. Like the status is a choice, rejection reason is multiple lines of text, smoke code is single line of text, so on and so forth. Okay, now the only one you really got to be careful on when you're doing this, most of this stuff is pretty simple. You don't have to, you basically just gotta put the title and the type field kind, and usually what the out of the box defaults are is all you really need to keep. This one here, the yes no field, okay, its default is yes, which I have never understood why SharePoint is set up that way. I don't know what Microsoft was thinking, because I cannot think of a single thing I would use this as yes. I mean, I'm sure there is something out there, but I've been doing SharePoint for 20 years. I've never ever did that. So most of the time, use it as no field to identify a special. What's the word I'm thinking of? Special circumstance why that is selected, right? The default is usually no. Okay, so, but you'll notice here when it created this, when I open up this field, and I scroll down, it says no. Now, if you're not careful, this will say yes, and then you'll have to go back and change it. There's nothing that says you can't do that, but the whole point of this is to automate the whole process, and I don't want to have whoever you give this flow to shouldn't have to do any work after they run the flow. Okay? So this is what our end state is. Okay? So I'm going to take you into the flow. I'm not going to rebuild it because this takes too long, and I don't want to keep you guys under that long. I'm trying to keep this video fairly short. So the way I started out is I manually trigger the flow. And inside this flow, just so you guys know, I prefer the new interface. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I like it because it's more functional to me than the old one is now. I do use the old one for certain things like copying actions and stuff, but they actually include that now. So I just like it better. So it's just a preference. You can do this in the old interface the same way. Close this Copilot thing out. I hate that. All right, so inside this step right here, it says manually trigger a flow. That's what you want to use because we're going to manually trigger this flow later on. Okay, because you don't want this being automatic. Otherwise, it'll keep making. I did write some protections in here in case something happens where it gets triggered accidentally, where it won't overwrite your data. But still, all right. So first thing, the only thing this flow really needs is what site are you putting this thing on? Okay, there's no way it can know exactly where you're putting it. So when you run it, it's going to bring up, it's going to ask you, hey, site URL. Put your site URL in there, okay? And then it captures it in the trigger. Now, at the end, you'll see that all these variables are being used, but they're used in different times, along with this action right here. This is all prep work for what proceeds later, okay? Did I close these up? No, I didn't. Let me close up these scopes real quick. I use scopes just to organize it. No other reason than that, because this thing's really long when you open up all the scopes. Like I said, you got to do a column for each action. That one's fine. That one's fine. Okay, so all the scopes are closed up. So at the end of the flow, we need to add the columns that we're making to the view. When you're using the site's endpoint, it automatically adds them. Where if you use the web/list endpoint like we're going to use in this flow, it does not. I tried different methods and nothing worked, so I just basically ran another call and added the columns. And what I do is, this is just an array. If you want the column names to be something else, you change them here, then you got to change them in the steps. But this is the list of whatever you want in that view at the end. You put it in this step right here. Okay, pretty simple. You just put them in between. You just go, square brackets because we're making an array, and then inside each one of these you go double quotes at the comma at the end and put the name in between. Okay, simple, right? Whatever library name you want, you put here. Now, if you want this to remain dynamic, all you have to do is add it to the trigger. So ask the person what you want the library to be called, and then you just put the resulting trigger variable in here. So I hard coded it just for simplicity's sake, because this thing serves one purpose. Okay. Then the last thing I did right here is I created some 365 groups in my environment, because these are roles. Okay. And these 4 are going to play a role later on too. Okay, these are just the names of the groups. And then this right here is pulling the profile of the person running the thing, because they're going to become an owner in the groups. Okay, because you need somebody. Even though when you create a 365 group, it creates you as an owner. When you're looking stuff up in roles in Power Apps or Power Automate, it only sees the member side. It don't see the owner side. Okay. It's looking for, so what it does is it's going to put you in as a member as well. So you'll be an owner and a member, which is fine. Okay. And that's the beginning of the prep. Okay. I probably could put that in the scope too if I wanted to, just so I can have it in stages. Next thing it's going to do, it's going to get the site ID based on the name you gave it. Okay. It's going to look up the name. So it's going to it's going to put your URL right here that you entered. Okay, it's going to do a get method, and it's going to go to this endpoint. So it's API web ID. Okay, you don't have to put ID on the end. You can just put web, and it'll pull it just the same. But this only lets it pull back the ID metadata. So that way, it's just the one thing. It makes it cleaner and it goes faster. It's a performance thing. Okay, so now you got your ID in here, stored in here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our library. Okay. Now, like I said, I put protections in here, so in case your library is already created, I don't want it overwriting your library. Okay, or causing failures. So we're going to query for the library. So we're going to do another call with your URL that you put in. It's a get, and we're doing API web list. Then I'm filtering the title to equal whatever you put in. Okay, or whatever's in the library name. Okay, it's looking for it. If we get a result back, it's going to say no, because the condition says it has to be equal to 0, or open close square brackets, which means the array is empty. Okay, it'll go here if it's not, and it'll just continue on. If it doesn't, it'll make the library. And this library, the call is almost identical to the columns. Okay, here now that we're writing something, we're doing a post. Now, if we're updating stuff, you can use a patch or a put, depending on what you're doing. Okay. This post is going to use basically the same call as I did up here. Okay. You're going to set your headers for accept and content type for application/JSON, semicolon, OData equals verbose, which is pretty standard across the board. And then down here, you're going to say your metadata. Your type is going to be SharePoint.List, because everything's a SharePoint.List to Power Automate. This is where the difference is right here. Okay, our base template. See, if we put base template 100 here, it would turn it into a list. We put 101, it puts it in the library. And those are literally the only 2 you really have to worry about. The rest are from the old SharePoint, and they're not used anymore. Okay, you're going to put your title here. So this is your display name. And then your description. So you could put some kind of funky description in here if you want to, and that's literally all you have to put in here, and it creates the call. Okay, now that we created our library here, we're going to swing down here. Now, what I did in these scopes down here is I put 3 columns in each scope. As you can see, there's 6 actions. Basically, there's 2 actions for each column, because one checks for the column and see if it's created, and if it's not, then it makes a column. Okay, so These are all the same, so I'm not going to go through all these. I'm just going to go through a few, and I'm going to go through the one that has our on behalf, which is right here. That's why I put the names in here. These are the names of the columns it creates. So let's open up this one. As you can see, it's got three sets of things. You know, one set for each column. So it's querying on behalf, and literally it's the same way as it up there. Except we're using the /fields after the whole thing, because we already know what library we're going into. So we're going to grab all the fields, and then we're going to filter the fields by the internal name is equal to on behalf. Okay, if it doesn't, it creates it. If it does create it, it just bypasses and goes on. Okay, and if you look down here, I just didn't put all the enters in there. I just made it one long string. But when you do it, using the same call as you did up here, except there's no filter, but it's a post versus a get. See, here it's a get, here it's a post, because we're creating something, right? Same headers as before, and metadata type SharePoint FieldType type, which is very important. It tells you what kind of column it wants you want it to make. The title, the internal name. Now, the difference between title and internal name is this is the name you see out front. You can put spaces, hyphens, whatever you want in there. It doesn't care. But this is the one where you make, this is your internal name, okay? This is the one that gets put on SQL, okay? You have rules, okay? Can't start with a number. Can't use spaces. Only a few special characters can be put in here. And you got to keep it a certain length. I think it's like 25 characters or something like that. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Okay. So there's your title stuff. There's your display name. There's your internal name. Now required. Now after this point, it's just your changing properties. Okay, from default. Okay, if you like everything default, then you don't have to put anything behind this. But I want the required to say false, which I think is the default. But I just put it in there just for GP. Default value. Okay, this is where we set the default value for the field. You'll notice it says 0. Okay, in a yes/no field, it only recognizes the numerical values. It's an integer field. Okay, so if you put 0, it's going to say no. If you put 1, which is the default, it's going to be 1. Your yes is going to equal 1. Okay, if you want it to default to be yes, then you don't have to put this in here. And this was my attempt to put it in the default thing, but it didn't work. So I didn't feel like taking it out because it wasn't hurting anything, so I just left it. And all your fields are going to look something like this. I don't think I put the default value in there for the rest of them. Just this one field. Okay, and then you just run it. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Next one is my rank field. Okay, I believe that was a choice field if I remember right. Nope, is a text field. Alright, so text is really simple. I literally just set the required and the hidden. Okay. Command's a text field as well. I'm looking at it based on the number here. I'm trying to remember one that had a choice so you can see the difference. Because choice has a few different things in it. Small code. I'm looking. Hold on. Alright, so let's just do this. Alright. This. Okay, let's go back to settings. Let's go down here. Okay, status is a choice. So let's look at status. Okay. So, here's the first one. Okay. As you can see, when you do a scope, it's just the name. It's nothing special about it. Okay, here's status. Okay. Now, when you do a status column, there's a little more involved, or a choice column. It's a little more involved. Okay. The FieldTypeKind is 6. Now, whether you do multi-select or not, it's the same one. Okay. It's what makes the difference is if no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of text. The only difference between a multiple lines of text and a single line of text is if you're going to allow more than one line. And I'll show you that here in a second. So in a choice field, you're going to create a table, right? Because each item inside the choice field is a record inside of a table. It's just a one row table. So you're going to go results, colon, square brackets, and then you're going to create an array, okay, all the way down to here. And then now if you want a default value to be there, you can take one of these options right here and put it in here. And then of course the hidden doesn't do anything. Okay, so let's look at the multiple lines of text. Okay, that's default. Rejection reason, let's look at that one. Okay, rejection reason is the very next one down. Okay, so in rejection reason, I'll guess it is a different number. Okay, my mistake. I thought it was the same. Oh, I'm thinking of the site's endpoint. The site's endpoint is what it just asks for how many lines of text you want, and that's how it knows if it's multiple lines of text or not. But this one is, difference is 2 and 3. So 3 means multiple lines of text. And all I put in here is the display name, the internal name, whether it's required or not. Okay? And that's how all these columns are being made. Now, after all the columns are made, I'm going to grab the columns I want to add to the default view. Okay? Now remember, these columns right here are the names. This is how you go back all the way here. Close up these scopes so I don't have to deal with them anymore. These column names are the ones you're going to put in the default view. Okay, whichever ones you don't want, you just remove them. Okay, I put all the ones that I made because I want them in the default view. Oops, too far. So in this action, you're going to do site URL, you're going to do a post, and then you're going to run the web list get title by name views endpoint, and then we're going to go get by title, and then you're going to identify the view name. You just put the display name in here, view fields, add view field, current item. Okay, I had to put this in a loop. Okay, this is a apply to all loop, right? So what it does is it grabs one name at a time from that array that I just showed you and puts that name in here, and it just loops through until it's done. Okay, you can only do one column at a time. It don't take long. I think this whole flow takes like 30 seconds to run. It's not a long flow. Okay, so once it does that, now our library tasks are done. The library is now complete. Everything is the way it's supposed to be. Okay, down here under here is where I do I create my groups, and I add that person, whoever's running it, as a member. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to do list groups, but it's filtering based on the display name is equal to that name. Okay, and it's got to apply to each as well. So it does one name at a time. Okay, it runs the first one, it lists the group. Okay, if it finds it, the condition is going to force it to the false side. It's looking for an empty here in order to create the group. Okay, so if it's empty, so if it comes back empty, that means the group is not created yet. It's going to create the group, and what it's going to do is we're using graph for this call. Okay, using the graph API and the groups endpoint. Okay, we're doing a post since we're making a group, and then this is the metadata that goes along. Now what I'll do is I'll put all this stuff I'm talking about in the description, so that way you guys have some documentation on how to do this. Okay, I'll put all the links that I showed you earlier, and I'll put these calls in there as well, and I'll of course put this in here. Now some of this is using metadata from Power Automate, like for this, this is the group name, there's your display name, which are the same. Group types is unified, mail enabled. I mean, I like having email addresses with all my groups because I can use them as distribution groups later if I want to. Okay, the mail nickname, I'm doing a replace function because I don't want the whole entire. The mail nickname is like an internal name for the group, and what I basically did is I'm taking all the hyphens and what have you out, and replacing what I'm basically just removing them. So it's just because in the names, if you remember right, if you remember, there's no spaces already. Now, if there are spaces, then you could put that in, you do an additional replace and remove those spaces. But I only wanted the letters as the mail nickname because that's like your internal name, right? So it's what it uses for your email address. So you wanna remove those, okay? And that's why the replace is there. And then security enabled. Anytime you're doing anything with Power Apps in a group, you got to turn that on, or Power Apps cannot see it. Okay, resource behavior options. Okay, these are the things that are gonna get rid of the annoying things that happens in groups by default. For instance, when you add somebody, it sends them an email. So the welcome email is disabled. The subscribe new group members is disabled as well. Subscribe members to calendar events is disabled, and allow only members to post is turned on. Okay, so there's different things here. I don't think you have to do all these. I think the only things I'd say, this stuff right here is literally the only thing you have to do. Everything below the selected stuff is just optional. Okay. It's going to loop through everything. Now, just in case, as you see, the group may be created already. So what this does is it checks the group membership of the person running this. And if you're already a member, it's going to push them to this side. Okay. So it's looking for, oops, sorry. It's going to the check group, the step above there. It's going into that step and looking to see if the length is 0. Okay, which basically means there's no data. If there's no data, that means the person is not part of that group. If it does come back with stuff, if it doesn't come back with stuff, then it adds that person as a member. See, add as member. Okay, that owner side's kind of misleading. I probably need to rename that. I got this from another flow. I didn't feel like rewriting it, so, and it works the same. So it's doing another graph call using the members $ref endpoint. We're doing a method of post, and it's using the OData ID for this. So it's looking up, it's going into the whatever the email address was for that. It's the email address of that person that I'm pulling from the group, from that step above, and adding that person as a member. Okay. And of course, the content type is application JSON. Now this is the group's HTTP call. Okay. Anytime you do a graph call, you have to do it in an HTTP call. Otherwise, it won't work. So, and then that's the end of the flow. Now, if we come out of the flow here, out of this thing, and look at the last run I did, which I only did one run. I just wanted to establish the library. Okay, so this one took 51 seconds, and that's only because it failed. And it failed on the creation of the thing. It's just because my connection died on me. I had to from time to time, how you gotta fix your connections. Well, one of my group's connection died on me, so I didn't realize that until after the flow ran. So it took about 51 seconds because it failed. When it doesn't fail and you don't have that many groups, it usually only takes like 30 seconds. Now the list is really fast. It only takes like 6 seconds, and you can make as many as you want. This is no different. All you have to do if you want to make more than one library in your thing here is, let's go back into it. Oops, I should have just hit the edit, huh? All right, so if you come in here, you see how I got one row of stuff here? Whatever comes up. Okay, see how it's just one row? Just do concurrent flows, or concurrent branches here. Just by clicking here. Whoops, sorry. It's supposed to bring up. Interesting. It's supposed to say, oh, I know what it is. Yeah, right click on it. Sorry. And then you're going to click add a parallel branch. And it'll create another one over here. And then you can put whatever you want in there. But you could just copy, you know, because each one of your libraries are going to be different. So, you know, that's why you want to branch it off right here, because right here, this is all prep work and site stuff, right? So you're only going to need that information, you know, because from there on down, it's just building the library, building the columns. Okay. I have in my last video that I did for creating a list from Power Automate, it actually showed that I had 9 lists that I made. Okay. Of course, I didn't go through them all, obviously. But that's how you do it. And it's pretty simple. And in my next video, I'm going to show how to create a solution and use this in tangent with that. Because the one thing the solution doesn't do that makes it automated is it does not create your data sources, right? It may house the names of your data sources, but it doesn't create them. And that's why I came up with this. This creates your data sources. And you can mix that libraries and list up too. It's just you have to use these established methods to do it. Okay? That's why it's important to keep each data source in one line. You know, you don't want to throw concurrent runs in there because it screws with it. You know, it doesn't like it, and more likely will fail. So, if you got any questions or comments, put them in the comments below, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. You know, I'm just like you. I'm a developer I'm a full-time developer, but I'm still learning myself. So, have any questions, put them in the comments. If you have any feedback, put them in the comments. I like both. I like positive and negative feedback. Okay, if I am doing something that I could be doing better, let me know. I love constructive criticism, but please make sure it's constructive. We're all here to help each other, and that's why I do this. So, like I said, if you have any questions or comments, just put them in the comments below, and I hope you guys have a great day.